Well, hello.
Hi, guys. Welcome to Office Hours with Arrow, a LinkedIn Live event hosted by Arrow leaders who care about what senior living looks like. Hi, I'm your host, Cassie Tweeton, Chief Sales Officer for Arrow, and with me is Stephanie Harris, CEO for Arrow Senior Living. We wanted to come together today and kind of invite you guys into a one-on-one conversation with Stephanie and I about the industry.
You wanted to
We
bore
are
them with
bore them. Oh
our
my gosh.
daily talks.
You're getting a behind the scenes look at Stephanie and I in any conversation we literally
Yes.
ever have.
Yeah.
Stephanie, why don't you start? Tell the viewers a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I feel like we're going to talk about our sales culture. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about the industry currently.
Well, I think one of the things that we got our start in working in sales. So sales culture integrates with so much of who we are as Arrow. And I've always really enjoyed Cassie. I've known Cassie since she was uh, what 12 years old.
Yes. And I'm only
And we were
21
listening.
now, so it's a short period of
Yeah,
time.
yeah, very short, yeah. Um, just a decade or two later, right? Um,
Right.
but what I've loved is that I'm an attorney by training and background in politics. Cassie uh, was in acting, and
Mm-hmm.
here we are, two people absolutely obsessed with relationship building and working with seniors. And it is so fun to have zero experience in sales outside of what we've been able to create within this organization. And it's just
Right.
been a lot of fun to work with you through that. From I think it kind of gives a little bit of a different perspective in how we view. Uh, we're so we're not necessarily so wrapped up in like technical accuracy as we are
Right.
in feeling. Um, Even down to like mise en scène. Here's a theatrical term that we utilize in how people experience our communities.
Right.
So I attribute a lot to that to you in continuing our culture and being the front of the house, which I think you should explain what I mean, what we mean by that statement, because I think that's a very fun highlight that kind of changes how to look at senior housing a little bit differently.
Oh, no, totally. So Stephanie is right. I'm a theater performance major, right? Degree in theater performance. And I actually fell in love with senior housing because I was traveling when we were in turnaround to wherever Stephanie and the team was during like spring break and
You did leave your first time and say, I just don't think this is for me.
yeah. And then the second time I came back and I was like, I'm going to forego the arts and just love senior housing. But the mise en scène of it, I was actually just talking with a couple of our new leaders yesterday on mise en scène. So mise en scène, it's a theater term. It talks about everything on the stage that isn't the players. And I feel like it sets the tone for, we pay attention to things that others might not. So like when people are coming into senior housing, they really are looking for a reason to say no to us versus a reason to say yes to us. And so we've really got to be paying attention to setting that stage and making sure that we're creating an environment where they're not saying no to us based on the way the community looks. We're actually saying no for the real reasons we have to overcome, which is the objection, that emotional piece that kind of ties into it. And so like when we talk about mise en scène, we talk about how do our communities show, what does it look like? How do the residents look? How do the employees look? What does the community itself look like? How do we set the stage to welcome? Because again, I love, one of the things I love that you say is, senior living isn't sexy, right? If people are coming in looking for senior living, they're doing it based on need, but those things can trip somebody up in making a decision. So, and I also love that you and I don't come from a very strong sales background. So we're just at the heart of the problem,
But
right?
we come from problem solving and reacting to never knowing what would, in your case, you never knew what somebody might do from an improv setting
Right.
or what they
Yes.
might screw up on the stage. And on mine, like I think I learned so much from my experience in politics is to read people and observe behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
That's those skills we use every single day and talking about leads. But you skipped my question about front of the house.
I did. I did. I was hoping that you would notice. No, I think that when we talk about front of the house and we talk about so when we look at our house, when we look at senior living, we talk about our communities like a house, right? And we talk about how our sales teams should be spending their time outside of the house, in the front yard, directly engaging with prospects. And the role that they play in the relationship with a brand new person coming in and introducing them to senior housing before we bring them into the house, which is that bigger move. I think, a lot of people focus on, I think a lot of people get stuck up in the conversation of like trying to convince the adult child, when
Yep.
really I think our goal is to sit beside the senior in the front of the house, outside of the house, outside of the senior living experience, know them at that level, and have senior living be something we do with them versus something that we do to them. And I think that is something that is really interesting when we go to conference or when we're in conversation or in concert with others. Like, I do think that as a whole, it can feel like senior housing is what we do to seniors, not what we do with seniors. And I
Yep.
think that's the root of our sales process, is getting the senior in the driver's seat.
I think the number one thing we find, we still do sales consulting, and work with communities, and it's just amazing when you start to talk about leads with communities that have been struggling. Each one of them is stuck behind a gatekeeper where an adult child is trying to get information and then sell to their parents. This is the first time they've ever experienced senior living. This is they're approaching it from a logical perspective and not recognizing that it's absolutely an emotional experience for somebody who feels like this is being done to them. And I know when something's being done to me, I become a petulant child. And not that our residents are petulant children. It's not a logical decision. It's emotional. Like, if somebody feel like a loss of independence.
Well, I think what also is really interesting to me is there's something about, and I don't know that people always self-reflect on this, but like, it's like we turn a senior into a person who isn't just a person with feelings and emotions, right? Like, we see them as an old person, and when you're an old person, they don't have like the same emotions we have as young people. And I think you bring up a great point. When something's being done to you in your 40s, it's going to feel the same as it being done to you in your 70s and
80s.
your 90s. You still have that same desire to be in the driver's seat and in that independence. And I think that one of the things I find really interesting when we're talking to families is adult children start to focus on everything the person can't do. And then the conversation starts to be about everything that's wrong. And I know that when my relationship with someone is only what I've done wrong, then I'm putting my feet down. Like, I'm digging in my heels. I'm not going to be susceptible to the conversation. And really, I think it becomes a negative. Like, and I think it's like how we approach it. We're fixing a problem. We're fixing a problem. And I don't know that anybody responds well to feeling like they're in a problem, or
Yeah.
that there are problems to be fixed.
Well, one of the things that's kind of stood out to me, much like probably many organizations did during COVID, we totally revamped our digital lead generation strategy. And what resulted from that was, I think we practically doubled our number of inquiries, and for the most part, sustained that level. Even though it's kind of taken a increase a little bit more in 2023, I think we saw a little bit more of a surge. Maybe that's the early signs of the baby boomers, but it's really not translating into the rapid growth that I would have expected across the industry. I mean, we are literally crawling in gains in occupancy when we should be leaping with the lack of new supply, or very limited new supply coming online. I do think it starts to speak to our sales and marketing approach could be in the way. And not only are we trying to generate more inquiries, who are we targeting? We might be targeting the wrong individuals who are kind of wasting our time. But I think at the other side of it is how we're even managing leads. We're all looking at call centers and ways to aggregate leads to manage this increased volume, when we really need to create better discernment tools to know which leads to work and work those leads a lot more fully.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, Cassie, like, I think one of the biggest struggles we've had post-COVID, and when we all needed a speed to lead recover, is getting the team to slow down now and recognize decisions don't happen overnight. And we actually don't need somebody moving in, or we don't want to be just a community full of individuals moving in out of urgency.
No, I would totally agree with you. And I think you and I have talked about this a lot. Like during COVID, our entire sales force turned over. So, or a good 50% of our sales force turned over. And so we were hiring people during COVID who were learning how to sell senior living in a COVID environment. And there was such a focus to speed to lead at that point that I think as we're coming out of COVID and we are digging into those lead bases where the leads looked but waited, because again, like our biggest competition is the conversation between staying at home or not. I think what we're seeing now is how we're saying, hey, stop pushing that 30. So we've got a question. What does speed to lead mean? I think this is a great question. So
it's called a lead with lead.
A lead with lead. So speed to lead is an industry term where it talks about how quickly you get to a lead and you convert a lead. So in the industry, it's really common for people to play in the field of 30 days. If I can talk to you, get you in, tour you, and close you in 30 days, that's a quick speed to lead. However, our approach has always been, of course, we'll support in that like quick, I think people
urgency.
Turn and burn.
Yeah, we'll make it
that quick. But we are going to find better, longer term leads when we slow ourselves down, we slow down to speed up, and we start to look at those people who are in that 6-month, 365 approach where we have more opportunity to create relationship with them over that time. And I think what you and I are working on with the teams right now is like, how do we get them to slow down? How do we get them to help solve the bigger objection that turns into a long-term lead? Because you don't want a quick move that either passes away quickly because they're moving in trauma. And you don't want somebody who's going to move into you. And then the second the new shiny penny around the corner shows up, they move out again. Like we're looking for longevity, right? We're looking for somebody who's going to move in and be a long-term resident for us. And so again, I think that's what speed to lead is. And I think that's what we're coming out of.
I think that because everybody was recovering so quickly, I mean, our experience is very similar to what I think many others experienced. They had turnover and they had, new people working in an environment that, only understood somebody moving because of a need. And those bad behaviors, I think, are in the way right now of the opportunity that we're missing. Because realistically, if you've got 10 inquiries that look at your community, one is going to be super urgent. That's going to be that speed to lead. The faster you get to them, the faster you can help solve their problem, you're going to probably win the sale. Mm-hmm. The other 9 out of 10, they just are on a slower pace. And I think our lack of discernment in the industry is that if we are only looking at it as one note, it's speed, when needs still exist. They are just a grade of need. It might have been a little more urgent. It might have slowed down or had a Band-Aid put on it. And that if we could view things in the long haul, that's where I think we could transform lives changed and by the services we offer, because we're catching them at a point where they're making a slightly more proactive decision in making the move.
Well, and I totally agree with that. I think as I think about my time in sales in a building, or even my time from a regional perspective or in this seat, like I will tell you the story of the people I met in crisis, rowing out that lifeboat, being in that relationship with them and their family, helping them make that decision. And like, those are the stories we talk about. I mean, if you were like, Cassie, why did you decide not to go the way of acting? Why did you come here? It was in those meetings with families, and it was being able to like sit in that moment with someone in crisis, help put somebody in the driver's seat of their own decision, and know that I was helping to change someone's life for the better. Like I wasn't going to get that, doing a commercial somewhere in Hollywood. I was going to get that like purpose-driven experience sitting in those conversations with families. And I think if you were to ask any of our team members who they feel most proud for, it's not that quick speed turn and burn speed to lead. It's that person that they literally are at. Like I remember,
they fought.
Well, I remember
that relationship.
Oh my gosh, when Jean Gross gave me the check to move in, like after I had to work she was a woman in one of our buildings. I had to work so hard and build through that relationship. She was the best resident she wasn't the best resident. We've had lovely residents, but like it felt so great to help this person, to know them and to have her have such pride in making that decision and be with her as she built her friendships in her home. And so I think that like, you got to slow down to speed up, and we've got to want to work someone through it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think that, we've really probably struggled to turn that back on. And I think we've shifted toward looking at some behavioral metrics that kind of speak to are we creating enough engagement in when we're
Right.
talking to individuals? Are they actually calling us back? Are we getting those repeat tours? I think we have to begin to look at some of those deeper behavioral driven metrics to see what we can do to improve conversion at a single site or across this industry. And it starts with recognizing that the no that we've heard is actually the KNOW, that there
Right.
is, they're not there. They're not quite there. And our job is to ask enough questions, to seek them helping us understand their problem. And in doing so, helping them get more committed to making a change. But that change might be a baby step that doesn't even involve making a move. And I think that when our
Right.
teams understand the power of not jumping straight to you should move in and why aren't you moving in, to figuring out why they're looking, and then understanding what might they be able to do in the short term to make their situation better, we get into problem solving mode. And that's when relationships that we call marathoners convert to move-ins. We get so wrapped up in when people will move or where they're going to move, and we forget about the lion's share of people are trying to figure out whether to move at all. And like, how do we figure out as an industry to do that at some scale that can help really build demand in our industry? That's our challenge.
Well, and I think a lot of people who come to us from different avenues don't realize how much extra practice we put into our lead relationship, right? Like, I mean, we are doing daily either in-person meetings or virtual meetings where, and this is something that like we've got special, we call them special forces. We've asked our core team, like our top home office leaders, to take on these virtual meetings with our teams.
And 23 different individuals doing this.
Yeah, from the VP of HR, we've got our VP of resident experience, we've
our
got
general counsel.
We've got our general counsel. We've got our CFO. Like
CFO, I saw him doing a case study this morning. It was awesome.
And honestly, when Will texts me updates, our CFO Will, when he texts me updates, I get so excited because I think we can get so siloed that we don't think about why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. And it's been so lovely to have the core team support us in this way, because it can sometimes feel daunting, right? The journey we're on to fill these buildings, especially coming out of COVID, and to have all the service areas kind of come around us and use their ideas and their support. Like, yep. We could not do what we do if it wasn't for everybody else and their support. So again, like the amount of time and energy we're putting into understanding someone's need and to understand someone's ability to make a decision or what drives them. I mean, we talk about relationship building and discovery, but like, to know someone is to help understand how they would make a decision. And I think that we can get so caught up in the reactiveness of the hearsay from an adult child or from another family member. And we really got to be able to like dump everything out and kind of say, okay, where are the facts and what we're hearing? And then how do we actually find the real problem to solve? So again, and you can't do that in 30 days. You can't do that in a quick tour that's 20 minutes and asking for the check. And if they don't say yes, we move on. Like that, there's a commitment made to that time.
So I call it, it's like, it's the slow dance romance. We get so impatient, because I even was talking to a team a few weeks ago. Shout out to my best buds, Kelly, Haley, Amanda. I always have fun talking to them, and actually I'm going to be chatting with them right after this. And Haley was expressing like, but I just feel like I'm losing my groove, or it was some comment like that. And I'm like, forget about it. Just like lean into the process. The process drives results. What got us into that feeling is when we thought we had to hit a number. And while numbers are important to track, we've got to perform. Behaviors drive performance. Strategy, is what's key. That's what is gonna win anytime over, or a culture is gonna be driving that strategy anytime. That's at the forefront of it. And like what we're just trying to do right now is say, can we as a company get everybody somehow connected into the sales process, not just from a supportive perspective or processing the move in or saying hi on a tour, but actually participating in the case studies, the practice discussions, the critical analysis of the inquiries, to think about the perspective of how of the consumer that is living in our communities. And I think that experience is super powerful. And I think within that, we're going to be able to see some more transformation in the areas that I think we've been kind of, banging our head against the wall, wondering how do we move this wall. It's going to happen because we have a bunch of people with a belief that are going to be participating in the process. And I think the special forces is such a fun, exciting way. I started my day-to-day doing special forces, and I'm fighting some allergy situation, but man, I draw energy from those experiences. And it is an incredible opportunity. And like, out of all the things I do each day, a lot of it I dread, but man, that's one I really, really look forward to. And it's such an important part of what we do. And I think it's fun that you guys allow us to participate in the special forces. Oh, Charlie Johnson.
Oh, Charlie Johnson. How do you overcome overbearing adult children that don't allow the parents to make their own decision? Oh, Charlie, how much time do you have? No. So, Stephanie, do you want to start this question, or do you want me to go?
No, I'll start off with, I think one of the most important things is acknowledging when an adult child wants to drive a certain path, but helping them to think ahead in a planning perspective. So I understand you want to approach your mom or dad about this move. I think it's important we set expectations, because if 9 out of 10 are going to say no, we know that's the odds. I understand you think that after you tour these communities, you'll narrow it down, you'll present it to your mom and dad. What if they say no? That's one of the most important turning points I like to leave sales team members with, is to figure out how to start problem solving with the adult child. So they start to see us in a different role than just being a salesperson, we could actually be a collaborator with them. And as a collaborator, we start to build a sense of expertise that they may then lean into. I think that's one of the biggest things, is if we challenge to say, no, let me talk to your mom, we sound like a salesperson. They don't want a salesperson meeting their mom. And I do think that it's really important that we get them to think a step ahead. They could say yes, that'd be great, but the odds are they're probably going to say no. What do we need to do if they say no? Or how should we respond? Or how do you anticipate responding? Or if they do say no, that's exactly when we should reconnect by phone and talk about next steps. And let's talk about how we can work together, or a new approach.
Right. I would agree with that. And I also think it's not being scared of the conversation. I think that a lot of the time when we're, we are not here in the industry to be passive in our approach to helping people make a decision. And I think that, especially when you're overlapping with adult children, it's exactly what you're saying, Stephanie. And it's also not being scared to just open up the dialogue and have the conversation, and then be a part of the advocacy for the prospect. Because again, like, if the goal of the adult child is that mom or dad is making a decision, then we've got to figure out the plan on how we are putting mom and dad in the conversation. Because again, the worst thing about somebody saying no is that they said no. And no is,
we have a gauge. We have a starting point. We have a conversation.
Yeah. And we're able to understand because again, and I think we say this all the time at our company, it's a KNOW. We don't know enough to say yes. And I think that it's our job in this role to help support them through the decision, but you can't be scared of the conversation. And so yeah, great question, Charlie. And I think it's relationship building. Like, one of the things I love about being the CSO of our company is like understanding that everybody hates the word sales. Like when you say the word sales, you have like that horrible picture of the, I don't know, car salesman who's going to put or focus or push you in there. And I think one of the things that we look at when we're hiring salespeople is we don't want you to come with a ton of sales experience. We don't want you to have any sales experience in the industry. We'll start there, because we want you to be a human first. Because if you can be a human and have empathy and sympathy and the ability to just like care about how someone's doing, that goes miles ahead being able to sell me a car I don't need. You know what I mean? Like, and it's helping to change the industry. Like, I wish we could call it something different. We're calling it that because it's universal. But like, I can safely say that there isn't a single person who works for our company who would give me the sales ick. And I'd be like, oh, I wouldn't want them helping me, or I wouldn't want them helping my mom make that decision. Like, we're hiring humans who genuinely care to help someone through the process. And I think that's one of the things I love about what we do.
Yeah.
is correcting that piece.
I mean, it's certainly a complex situation because it feels confusing as to who is the buyer, and I think ultimately we need to focus on who is the consumer. And our residents are who will be living in our community and living that experience. But at the same time, our families are also living our experience too. So how do we work alongside with them and like really bring them into our own critical
Right.
analysis of like what next steps should happen? I mean, a gentleman that was my mentor used to say the hottest corners of hell are reserved for those that in a moment of crisis do nothing. But often,
Right.
how many of our leads do nothing? And if we can get the families to recognize this is a moment of crisis, so let's try to get some forward progress, I do think we see adult children begin to work with and open the doors to the communication with their family member. It's so foreign to me because most of our top 10 boards, we're talking directly to seniors, even our assisted living
Right.
communities. And I think if it's flipped the opposite at yours, really explore what that looks like. Cause I think that's the most transformative part of of the process.
Well, and I think if it is flipped, why do we think that the adult child is the true decision maker? And I think that's that's probably a bigger, more philosophical question. I don't want anybody else making the decision for me. And I do think you get miles and miles ahead when you're talking to the person who actually is going to be most affected. Like, again, that's not to say that our families aren't affected by someone making a move. They surely are. A lot of the reason adult children are calling is because what is currently happening in their life is creating, I don't want to say the term inconvenience. I don't know that that's the right word, but like if an adult child is calling, it's because the norm for mom or dad has changed and they have had to step in to, fix that norm. But again, I think it's every single day it's the resident. And so how are we making sure that the resident is feeling the most comfortable in that choice? And honestly, it's a bigger conversation. But again, I think Stephanie brought up the top 10 board. That's part of our meetings every day. We've got our 10 leads that we are in the moment with. And that's how we're kind of approaching who are we focusing on, who is that person we're talking to today, tomorrow, the day after, and kind of working through those plans.
Can we get that on a shirt? Be a human first. I would absolutely embrace that because I used to joke around in sales training that it's like people go to work and they forget they think to be a professional person is to not be a human person first. And like one guy that worked with us for a very, very long time told me that what he learned in our sales process and asking questions upped his dating game in an incredible way. It's practice. This process is just how you approach your relationships in general and keep that in your professional engagement with prospects. That's how you stay human. And I think it's just a simple trait that gets missed.
I always think of Ariel, right? Like Ariel, who works for us, works with us. He's like just the most lovely, warm human.
He says we hired him at a stop sign. So
yeah, but like he would get around prospects and he would just become like this like weird, rigid robot. And I think we do that. We get into these conversations, or we can get into these conversations with families, and we like put up that wall, and we don't realize that we're meeting someone in a moment where what they really need is for us to hear and listen. We've all been in those situations where we are in crisis and the person we're talking to doesn't feel that crisis because it's not their crisis.
Mm-hmm. But here's the crazy thing. Here's Ariel, the most genuine human being you'd ever want to meet.
Lovely.
Who turned on this like awkwardness. Ariel, we would never have really developed the terminology Scary Larry had it not been for you. So we love you and thank you for that.
Yeah,
not everybody is necessarily the right fit for that to be their day job. But here is the most lovely individual who then translated his stiffy stuff and like just can't. We can't. You can't have that in an experience where you're impacting people's lives or hoping to impact a decision. I think half of this is relationship. The search for the right place is the search for the right people.
Well, what is it that you always say, Stephanie? We call and write the lonely. We row out the lifeboat. We can help the people in that quick speed to lead 30-day thing. But the people who probably really, really need us are the people who need us to like get down in the dirt with them and kind of really be a part of that. So I am seeing that we are at 30 seconds until the end of this call. So I think we did it. I feel like we're going to have to come back and talk again. But join us next week with our memory care team as we chat about supporting the family members of those living with dementia diagnoses. Guys, thanks for spending time with Stephanie and I. We really appreciated it. And you know what? I guess we will see you guys next time. Stephanie, any closing thoughts?
Have a great one.
Yeah, have a great one. Bye, guys.